You are listening to the Food Means Business podcast, which features the personal stories and secret ingredients behind what it's like to abandon your day job to start a CPG food and beverage business. I'm Janaba Johnson-Jones, former marketing executive turned entrepreneur and founder of food business incubator Hudson Kitchen. Join our community of fellow food business owners and subject matter experts to learn and laugh with us as we explore a startup world that's a little more culinary and a lot less corporate these days. Hi, Parker. Welcome to the Food Means Business podcast. We're so happy that you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Janaba. Excited to just chat food and kind of catch up.
Yeah, I want to hear all about your story, but first, tell us about your journey from employee to founder.
Ooh, that's a long, winding journey. Being super honest. But yeah, I graduated school, neuroscience, finance background, went into management consulting, was working in that realm for a while, and kind of found nutrition through a set of experiments that I ran on myself, and became so compelled that I had to start creating my own products to help get certain mushroom nutrients into people's diets, which I'm sure we'll jump into today.
Yeah.
But I love the question. I think it's an interesting question. And as a side note, I actually was doing contractor work for my old employer for close to 2 years while I got Fōrij, my current business, off the ground.
That's good to hear, because you kind of hear these like stories about people just kind of leaving their job and kind of abandoning it to start their business. But it's nice to know that you kept something on the side to keep money flowing in, I assume.
Yeah, precisely. It's I'm sure, as you're very aware, and others are as well, it's a huge challenge and endeavor to kind of get your own operation off the ground, especially in food.
Yeah, very true. So you mentioned that you did a series of experiments. So can you give us a little bit of information about what you did?
Of course. Yeah. I don't know what there wasn't anything that, I was super hell bent on, but the roommate that I was living with at the time in 2018, he ate like crap effectively. So, was eating Pop-Tarts and Cheez-Its, and that's what he ate when he went to the grocery store. He didn't know how to cook. And so I was giving him a hard time one day, and we made a bet. And I said, I think I could go vegan for 30 days if you were willing to join, or if you would eat healthy. And effectively, I went on like a very strictly vegan diet for 30 days, and it was sort of for fun. And I noticed kind of fundamental shifts in how I felt towards the end of that 30-day period. So it was really after day like 15, 16, 17 for me. And I thought it was a good time and was having fun. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to do this again with another sort of nutritional regimen or diet. And I ended up spending 18 months in a row trying nutritional regimens for most of those months.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was fun though. I had a really good time with it for most of the months.
Why do you say most of them?
There were some really challenging ones.
Yeah.
Like the whole 30 was really challenging for the first couple of weeks. Keto was really challenging, and I wasn't doing this, kind of half baked, or I wasn't doing it where I was eating crap. Like I was being super regimented, eating really healthy throughout all of these lifestyles, but those two were challenging. I found gluten-free to also be really challenging. So I don't know. I think everybody's unique, and I think things like that are really valuable for people to go through, individually, and not just take, my experiences or others' experiences kind of for fact.
Got it. So with this experiment, you ended up with mushrooms?
Yeah. So good question. How did I get there? After about 12 months of going through more standard diets, right? Like vegetarian, pescatarian, keto, Whole30, like more like, I guess what I would call like pop culture diets. I started getting into more niche subjects and topics. And one of them, which I was starting to learn about, were these like adaptogens or functional mushrooms. And I had a really interesting experience with functional mushrooms at a class that I went to at a local apothecary that was all about adaptogens and tonics. And I felt like the very real benefits of reishi mushroom during this class, and felt really compelled by these mushrooms. So I decided for 1 month, I would go off of all supplementation. I kind of am always here and there with supplementation. And I also went off of all caffeine, and I made my own sort of functional mushroom teas or I guess tonics, if you will. And that was like the month. So that month in particular was the month that I felt best. So I was just like sleeping super well, had like a lot of energy, was really efficient and really productive at work. Just like felt like all systems were a go. So that month in particular had a really big impact on me. And, my background being in neuroscience, I understood what more like medicinal or psychedelic mushrooms do to your body. But I never really looked into some of these functional mushrooms that are totally legal, that they're consumed all around the world. And so I dove really heavy into the research there just out of curiosity and started to find like really, really impressive studies that were being done around the world on a lot of these mushrooms, and mostly kind of in the Eastern hemisphere. So I just became very compelled by what was happening in the space and a little bit inspired to kind of help bring that to more of the Western hemisphere or to my own society as a whole.
So what made you decide on a food product versus a beverage? Because I've seen a lot of mushroom coffees and those types of things. So
Sure. Yeah, I as I kind of like started to explore the different products, that were available, something that I realized pretty quickly was the modern and mass consumer will not consume whatever it is unless it tastes really good, right? I don't think that's a super surprise to anyone. And I wasn't very impressed with a lot of the coffees on the market. And so for me, I actually started to take these different mushroom supplements and like I was making my own extracts and tinctures at home. And I would put them into kind of like my own breakfast. So I was putting it into like a cereal or an oatmeal, then eventually a granola. And I basically was working with my roommate's sister who was living with us at the time. And she's a very talented baker and chef. And we just started coming up with recipes to see, okay, how could we get these mushrooms into different things that I was eating in a way where you really couldn't even tell that the flavor was there. So that's kind of how we started on food. And it was more so an opportunistic component and the idea that we felt a strong belief that we could get these mushrooms into different foods without impacting flavor.
got it. So, okay, so you decided you're going to launch this food company. What did you do first?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is all going on and I'm experimenting my own and I'm putting these mushrooms in different foods and we're trying different recipes and really having fun. It was just out of like fun and curiosity. And I start bringing these creations into my office where I'm working and I'm like doing surveys and I'm handing them out. And again, it was so much fun. So around the same time, I found myself at a startup conference, just visiting a friend. He was trying to network. I don't know. And everybody at the startup conference is asking, okay, what do you do? Like, what are you working on? What are you building? And I wasn't building anything or that I thought. So I made it up on the spot and was like, well, I'm going to build like the first mushroom based food product set. And 9 out of 10 people, it was like a tech conference in San Francisco, looked at me and really could care less, and one guy in particular, who was an angel investor, thought that it was really clever. And he thought that like we were ahead of the market. And he was friends with the guy who was putting on the startup conference. His name's Sam Parr. And he was like, Sam loves this stuff. You got to go tell him about it. So he brings me up to Sam and there's like 20 people who are trying to network with Sam and get his contact information. And this guy cuts everybody off and is like, Sam, you need to talk to Parker. He has this really cool mushroom concept that you're going to want to hear about. So we exchanged information and, they were like, okay, cool. Like send me your pitch deck. And so the first thing I did was I went onto Fiverr and I had a logo made and then I made a pitch deck and then, went home and I thought, okay, I'm going to have to start figuring out how to sell this product. Clearly there's intrigue from people who are following this market. So that was kind of the very first move, if you will.
So were you able to get investment from Sam Parr?
No, we didn't get investment for 8 or 9 months, but that to me like helped validate some of like the external market intrigue. And then I went back to Seattle, which is where I live. And we took our granola and I started going like cafe to cafe and selling it into different cafes. And I was at the gym and there was a month-long period where I wouldn't let myself leave the gym until I had ran 5 taste tests with people in the gym. So I would bring like product. And for me, I thought, okay, if I could solve like really, really solve the kind of the taste equation and our products would have these elevated benefits and this elevated benefit mix around, cognitive health and energy, I really felt like there was a really great opportunity there. And we were solving kind of a real issue. So every single day I would go to the gym and I would bring, competing products in little like white like ketchup cups and I would run taste tests, kind of there while I was going and selling at different cafes and kind of monitoring.
So that was a great idea because like, that way you can get feedback. Were you able to make changes to the product, or did you kind of feel like you had the right product all along?
No, no, yeah, yeah. We made changes for 2 years. I mean, we're arguably still making changes on some levels, but after about 6 months, we started working with a product developer who, we have some sort of core principles around our products now of, how we're able to effectively incorporate a medicinal amount of these mushrooms into our products while not impacting flavor. And so we worked with the product developer to kind of get to that point where it was like a little bit more scientific and not just us like in the kitchen, splitting up a sheet pan into six ones and trying different things in each one. So
So when did you get to the point where you were actually packaging something to sell to consumers?
yeah, yeah. So we were selling cafes for a while, and an opportunity came along basically to sell in like a local subscription box. It was like kind of right after COVID had hit. This is like early 2020. And we had been reached out to. And so they were like, hey, we would love to sell your products. We've heard of them. We found them in this cafe. We think it's really cool. Do you sell them in bags? And I thought, well, of course we do. And so I went out and sourced craft bags and went and got like a little stamper. And thankfully I noticed one of my friends in Seattle kept posting about this chocolate company in Seattle. And so I had told him, I said, hey, do you know the founder of Joe's Chocolate Co? Do you know Joe? And he's like, well, his name's not Joe, but I do know him. His name's Peter. And so Peter was the one who I told him about this opportunity. And I was like, how do you put product in bags? And he said, okay, why don't you come over? And I came over and he gave me like a heat sealer and he
Nice.
kind of like showed me different things and he let me use their kitchen space. And so, that was kind of when we started like just out of more opportunistically, we were like, great, we should put product in bags. And I think, yeah, that was our very first purchase order for like $6,000.
That's amazing. So
Yeah, it was,
so tell me a little bit about your target audience because there's a specific person that's interested in consuming mushroom products for their health. So I would love to.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're always sort of testing this. I think right now we really have two core consumers. The way that I like to think about it and frame it in my own mind is there's a reactive consumer and there's a proactive consumer. So this reactive consumer is more so like learning about these benefits of mushrooms because they have a problem. So typically it's an older consumer, like 50 to 65 or like 45 to 65 maybe. And maybe they're starting to see some cognitive decline or looking for ways to sort of address some age related concerns and are looking for natural ways to do that. So they're Googling, they're talking to their doctor. And something we've invested a lot in is our SEO and blog presence. So, like last month we drove over 50,000 unique users to the website who are learning about the benefits of lion's mane. And so these are people who have a concern, are learning, hey, this is an interesting sort of natural remedy. Let me try this, right? And people are compelled by it being kind of in an existing food item. So that's sort of one core audience. And then the other core audience is more of this like proactive younger audience, right? You could think like young family, young mom who they know about more like functional ingredients. They're intrigued about functional ingredients and getting them into both their own diet and their children's diet. So we're seeing quite an interesting customer segment open up with like more family and children specifically.
Hmm. That's interesting. So you got your product into the boxes. What happened next after the subscription boxes?
Yeah. So the subscription box company, I think like, unfortunately, I think went under like a year later or less than a year later. And they pivoted. I actually think they still exist, but they're like a video editing company now. They're clearly multi-fast. And after that, we started selling online. And at the time I was living in my tent in our backyard. I had several roommates and
Okay.
I was,
Wait. Why?
so I was storing product and like equipment and whatever in my old bedroom. I bought like metal racking
Mhm.
because I didn't have money to pay for a warehouse. And it had gotten to the point where during the day, I would like store boxes of random things on my bed. And then I would have to like move them off of my bed to like go to sleep at night, or was only sleeping on half the bed. And it just became like kind of alarming.
Eh,
So I decided, okay, I'm just going to move outside. Like I'll be fine. Like I could sleep 365 in Seattle in a tent. It's not that big of a deal. I didn't even really think about like the end game. I just moved outside. And I ended up living outside in a tent for 2 years.
Wow. Okay.
And like throughout the bed, we had like full metal racking in the house. There were desks. When we had interns our first summer, like from the university, we were all working in the bedroom. Um, so right around like kind of year one, when I was living in the tent, everyone's talking about D2C, and we were working with an agency for a bit, and things weren't going super well. And so one day I was like, okay, I'm going to make good content and I'm going to like sell our products online. Yeah. And so what was next was I started making this content about like me living in a tent to like do what I'm doing and why I'm so passionate and compelled and about my story. And we had some videos that like went viral and like really, did super, super well for a long time and kind of got us kind of a little bit off the ground, if you will. So that was kind of the next stage was more of this like D2C pop, got us off the ground, like showed some validity. We started to get like really good reviews, like strong repurchase rate. And then from there, we got a really cool opportunity with one of the distributors basically who was like, hey, we saw your ad. We think this is really cool. We'd love to put you in our kind of like emerging brand portfolio. So like, you don't have to enter any of our distribution centers, but you have access to enter any of them that you'd like. And so like, here are the different retailers that pull from them. And so that was a slight transition into focusing a little bit more on retail. And that was maybe mid 2021 ish, I think. Yeah. Like mid to late 2021.
Got it. So what happened next?
Yeah. So then 2021, and we have access to distribution and we're intrigued by it. And the D2C became a lot more challenging around that time. There like was the iOS update and whatnot. And we were talking to some investors. And at that point, like we kind of required some capital to like keep growing. We were just like running production runs at a certain size where it was like, we kind of need some money to like float our cash to cash cycle, if you will. And we're looking at maybe outsourcing production to a manufacturer or like getting a space ourselves. And we were in really deep with a couple angel investors who traditional sales guys, they like built their own business, very like going to go to every door, knock on their door. And I resonate with that on a lot of levels. And so, we all knew about this distribution kind of opportunity or access. And during COVID, you had to just email people, like you couldn't meet with people anymore. And there became a lot of challenges, but in the same face, there became a lot of cool opportunity. So I put together this plan and this idea that I would buy like effectively a glorified minivan. And between you and I originally purchased a pop-up like camper that went on my old car. So I had like an old like small SUV and that you like untie strings and like this like thing on top.
Right.
Which would have been absurd if I had lived out of that. But I found this like really cool 1995 Japanese import pop-up camper van, pretty affordable, like wheels on the other side of the car. And I convinced these guys, I was like, look, like I'm going to go pursue some of this distribution in a couple of these regions I think we could do really well in. I will leave the tent and I will move into this van and I will drive around the country for as long as it takes.
Oh my goodness.
And I had a girlfriend at the time. She wasn't super stoked about that.
I'm thinking
We're
not
dating anymore. Just dating anymore. And so they were like, awesome. Like, and in my mind, when there's so much noise coming through email and everyone's just trying to get on a call and I'm like, hey, I'm going to drive 1,000 miles to come meet you and we can stand 6 feet apart, but I'm still going to drive 1,000 miles. Like that's how much I care about this. Yeah. Thought it was a compelling reason for people to give me some attention.
I agree. So what happened? So did you get to meet with the people you wanted to meet with?
Yeah. Oh my God. I have like PTSD from living in that van. I lived in the van for a year and I got off actually, I was looking at I had some memories. I got off almost exactly a year ago.
Wow.
So I got off of the road almost exactly a year ago. Or a little bit less because I got on in September and I came back like late August. Okay. So yeah, I drove around a lot of the country and most of it was work. I slept in, I don't know, probably 150 different grocery store parking lots, was sampling product, demoing product, was meeting with buyers, was opening up different distribution.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to probably unpack there, but I think I blacked out like half of it, honestly.
I mean, you really had to, because, if you had said this was, kind of set out to be that 2-year plan, you probably would have done it. So it makes sense.
Mhm. Totally. Yeah. But, it's really like in my mind and how I think about this business and this game is like it's so saturated. Like it's so saturated, like
Yeah.
cash is so
Yep.
challenging. The consumers have so many options, the buyers have so many options. And like you really need a way to differentiate yourself and stand out. And so, that's always how I've thought in terms of just like trying to garner attention or put together good content or like really try and get some of these meetings in terms of, how we're going to market. So that's a little bit of the
Yeah.
background and backstory on Fōrij.
That's crazy. It definitely shows dedication for sure. So what other kind of off the wall things have you done to to kind of get the word out about the business?
Yeah, I mean, oh man, I've like swam across, like across. I live on a floating home, and I've swam across the bay to people on the dock to hand out samples. I've done like airplane giveaways. There's been a couple of those that like I've produced some content that I've gone a bit viral on. And again, it's like I try and think like where like there's so much noise everywhere that exists in all these traditional communication channels. And so like how can you open up like non-traditional communication channels where noise doesn't exist and you also can have a more authentic kind of communication, whether that is with one-on-one with the consumer or with a key decision maker. So those were some of the bigger ones. Let's see, like there were some things on the road that I did. Like
I have
I don't know.
I heard that sampled on a flight.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, 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 yeah. So I've run several giveaways on flights, and I've figured out which airlines are more like lenient letting you
Yeah.
do that. But as part of that, I've like convinced the flight attendants to let me do like giveaways on flights or samplings on flights. So I'll go in and I've had a couple of them who will let me get on the PA system
Nice.
mid flight. Like I'll get up and they're like, "Hey, this guy's got something." And so I'll get on and hand out product and just talk with people. That's always super
Yeah, that's
fun.
nice.
I've been thinking about putting together a challenge where, like for 24 hours in a row, I'll just fly and I'll just do giveaways on airplanes. And like you could do on like quarterly and you
Yeah.
can try and get people excited about it. I haven't thought a lot about it. And honestly, like it sounds pretty exhausting, but it would be kind of
It does,
fun.
but it sounds a lot of fun. That's true. So you mentioned before when you were talking about, kind of working out of your home about interns. Tell me about your team and who you have
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, great question. And actually, like I think as I think about the evolution of our business and kind of what are we doing differently and why I believe we're going to win, like that becomes a more critical element, I think, for this next upcoming year. So, our team largely today exists. There's like maybe 3 or 4 of us today. It's really myself and then a woman named Amy. And Amy manages operations. She works with our
Right.
co-packer. She manages freight and logistics, forecasting. She manages fulfillment. She like really is holding the business
Yeah.
together, I think, while and giving me some room to like go and figure out how to grow the business. Amy is unbelievable and she always deserves more credit than she gets. And something, I've been working on internally and actually with another founder in this space, we've been kind of building on some systems collectively sort of for our own brands is building more autonomous loops and hiring like full-time folks from around the world with different skill sets. So right now, kind of our most recent hires, we have 2 full-time employees. One is full-time influencer outreach and product seeding. And then the other one is full video editing.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
we're like definitely taking a bet on content
Yeah.
this year and just really trying to get a lot of really strong content out and organic content. So I think as we look to evolve, like that will be a key pillar, as something else I'm intrigued by is like some of the podcast marketing or even podcast guesting and just, trying to share some of the story and share some of like the ridiculous stories that I've done in the past, even like here today.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, we'll continue to look to expand the team in really cost efficient ways, but also in ways where like, if we go and we hire someone who is full time out of the Philippines, we can pay them a wage that is effectively would be comparable to $90,000 a year
Yeah.
here, well above their minimum wage. And like they're doing awesome work. But it really feels like a win-win, I think, if you can kind of solve that equation effectively, which we're learning how to do. So it's been really fun and really cool to work with people all around the world.
Yeah, that is really cool. So talk a little bit about kind of just like networking with other CPG founders. Like I've found, in this space that people have kind of welcomed me with open arms. I've gotten, like
Totally.
people will talk to me about whatever and anything. So I'm wondering like if you've had that same experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, chatting with people, and at least for me personally, like one of my favorite things to do is trying to connect other people when there's a specific need and use case. And I never look at, networking with someone else to think, okay, what can I get out of this? I always look at it to say, who can I connect them with, or what are they struggling with, or what is somebody else struggling with that maybe this person could help them chat with? And ultimately that I really think that in the end, it is selfish, because it says, I find this person to be really smart, compelling, interesting. I think, in the future, I may need help with something that maybe this person can help with. And I would, I want to help this person first.
Right.
But yeah, it seems like in this industry, it's sort of an us versus them mentality. And us is anybody who's selling under $100 million in their brand, which is really
Yeah.
cool. And it's really fun. And, I think a lot of the investment dollars that are in this industry are here because they just love the industry versus they are trying to get massive returns. So it creates more of this like emotional bonded industry versus I think in tech, where it feels a lot more like sort of cutthroaty, and it's just, it feels way more like financially motivating, where I could chat, here with some of my biggest competitors and we could chop it up and give each other leads and honestly have a good time. So I totally agree and feel the same way.
Well, how has entrepreneurship changed you?
I think in a lot of ways, entrepreneurship has granted me the permission to be my authentic self. Like I love doing shameless, ridiculous things. I think it's super fun, and I think more people should do them. And in a lot of ways, like being an entrepreneur just helps me justify my own behavior. Um, so I really like that. I think it's fun having no rules some days. You at least you have your own rule set.
Right.
What about you? I guess how do you answer that question?
That is a very good question. I think that I take a lot more risks, and feel, for lack of a better like phrase, like feel, comfortable being really uncomfortable because I know what the payoff is going to be. So I think, because when I was working a corporate job, it was like very much like, okay, I'd have to be here. I'm working this whatever hours I'm working, and I'm going to do what they asked me to do, whatever. I'm going to go home, and didn't really take any risks around that. But now I can kind of go and come with an idea and go and execute it. And it's a little bit scary, but it's also a lot of fun. So
Yeah. And Hudson Kitchen's been on for a decade. Is that?
no, it hasn't been that long. It's been around
Is
since
that?
so it's been around since 2015, and I started the business really doing workshops and networking events because I wanted to build this facility that took 4 years to build. So we opened in 2019. So yeah, so it's been
Okay. Yeah.
it's been a minute, but it's a lot of fun. It's been a little crazy, as you know, like raising money and doing all the things you need to do to make your dreams come true. But it's great. It's been great.
Yeah.
Cool.
It is.
So we have something at Hudson Kitchen called the Money Bell, and we ring it when people get their paychecks or they bring on new retail partners or whatever. We'd love to hear what you're celebrating.
Mm. Yeah. I think for me, there's maybe like two money bells right now.
Okay.
So one would be, we're about T minus 60 days out from launching in Asia.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We're not launching ourselves. I think that would be crazy. We have a really, great relationship with the distributor and like awesome payment terms, and have seen just like really great things from them. They've kind of paid for everything to pave our way into Asia, and they have a really excellent distribution, and they're positioning our product in a super unique way. And so we're really excited there, and everybody's sort of aligned on truckload volumes, which is really exciting, I think, for our business.
Mhm.
And how the contract is structured is to be really consistent kind of cash flows in order. So it's super exciting. We're really excited to get that off the ground. So like that's a ring.
Awesome. Yay.
The other one is we are putting together a product line for an influencer who has like collectively about 19 million followers.
Wow.
So he recently put out kind of a post about it, and in under 24 hours, we had like 1,000 pre-signups. So we're really excited to kind of get them off the ground, and it'll be cool awareness for us. And he's always wanted his own product, and we definitely feel like we have the capability to put that together for him. So we're just really excited to kind of work together and like explore this as a potential opportunity, and feel like there's just so much opportunity working together. So it's been really fun.
That's awesome.
As well. So
yeah, that's really awesome. Congratulations. And I also think collaborations are just like so important to the growth of business in general. So, well, Parker, thank you for being here. Tell everyone where they can find out about you and Fōrij.
Yeah. If you're looking at Fōrij specifically, you can go to our website, which is www.fōrij.com. Fōrij.co, Fōrij. And then if you're curious about me, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and share a lot of content there and engage with a lot of people and love chatting with new people. So that's, you can look me up, Parker Olson on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you'll find me. And I have like a little mushroom emoji, I think, next to my name. So
Cool.
it's a good place. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sure, thank you. The Food Means Business podcast was produced by Hudson Kitchen. It is recorded at the studio at Kearney Point and mixed and edited by Wild Home Podcasting. Our theme song is by Damian DeSandes, and I'm your host, Janaba Johnson-Jones. Follow Hudson Kitchen on Instagram at The Hudson Kitchen, and to get food business bites right in your inbox, sign up for our newsletter at thehudsonkitchen.com/newsletter. Listen, follow, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts. Until next time.